to the top.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for returning or joining for the first time. My name is Maureen Hughes, and I'm super happy to be here. Tonight's talk is really generated from all of you, and it's about a couple of things. When I sent out the Google survey to all of you that were here a couple of weeks ago, there was a common theme, and one of them was menopause and weight gain. So that's what I focused tonight's talk on. I have incorporated in some bone health because that also came up, as did hot flashes. So a lot of it is interrelated, as we know, and so I kind of put it all together, but I really want to also talk about, so that we can think about it moving forward for our last session. Almost everyone commented on what a great feeling it is to be connected in this common experience and that sense of community. And that was one of our major goals, was to create a supportive network. And so I want to figure out how we can catapult this after our third session. Like, what does that mean for all of us on campus in our different little nooks and corners of this campus on this at this place called Hamilton. So I want to think about that. But firstly, I really am excited that people felt that sort of support. So I encourage you in our Q&A and our discussion piece to give feedback on what's worked for you or what you have found helpful. So having said that, I'd like to start with a little bit of mindfulness. I did that last time. It's super important because just like last time, my heart's still pounding out of my chest. I get very amped up. So let's just quietly take a deep breath and slow ourselves down. Either close your eyes or cast them down. And just slowly become aware of your breath, leaving all that happened today off to the side and focus inward. And as we breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, become aware of that breath and the life that it gives us. And I want to fix our mindset on celebrating the incredible female body, as complicated and maybe troublesome as it can be. I want us to focus on that knowledge that we will gain and how that empowers us. And I want us to breathe in that support that we will feel tonight as we sit with people that have experienced similar, or maybe looking forward to this coming. Not that you're looking forward to it, but that it will be coming in your future. So let's take another deep breath in. And exhale. And one last breath in. And exhale. And when you're ready, let's open your eyes and let's learn about some metabolism. Okay. So, let's start with our agenda. I got to have something to keep me focused. Again, we're recording the first half of this. I ask if you have questions, jot them down. If you put it in the chat, I won't see it because I'm not that good at multitasking yet on the Zoom. So write them down and we'll talk about them later. We're going to go through similar to last time's model. We're going to talk about the basics. We're going to introduce some new players, talk about insulin sensitivity and resistance, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, visceral fat, which is that belly fat, curbing menopause weight gain, Then we're going to do a little piece on hot flashes, then questions and answers. Okay, and commentary. I had to bring back the marching band because we added some players to the marching band. I'm not sure where they are on this field, but it's important to know, like menopause, so many layers, so many moving parts, and we've got a lot to pay attention to. Some things we're going to be able to manage. Some things may be bigger and we're going to need to seek outside help. But my role tonight is to try to help.
Is that talking to me? Are you talking to me?
Okay, how do I mute people? I'm going to ask you all to mute yourselves. I don't seem to have, hold on a second. Let me just, let's see that. Okay, so here we are. These are our new players in the band. We have insulin. So as you may or may not know, insulin is a hormone released from the pancreas, and it's used to regulate our blood glucose, our sugar. All the food we eat eventually breaks down into glucose. The insulin recognizes the glucose elevating in our blood. It releases, the pancreas releases that insulin. The insulin binds to the glucose and helps navigate it. It transfers it into our cells, giving us our energy. That's the role of insulin. So your type 1 diabetics, their pancreas does not produce insulin and they need to take it. They take it in the form of an injection. A type 2 diabetic or a pre-diabetic are individuals who have developed some resistance to that insulin. That insulin is not able to navigate smoothly into the cells. And so we have elevated glucose in our bloodstream that has its side effects. And then so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But insulin is a big player in menopause because for whatever reason, it starts to decline its production as well. But there's ways we can improve it. Dopamine, I had to bring dopamine in because dopamine is one of those neurotransmitters in our brain like serotonin and endorphin and oxytocin, and it's sort of a feel good. But dopamine's role is specifically on a reward basis. You either visually see something, you need it, you want it, you feel like you give yourself that reward, and then you feel the pleasure, the dopamine release. Estrogen helps with dopamine production, and as we know, our estrogen is declining in perimenopause, and it is virtually non-existent in menopause, post-menopause, and so that dopamine starts to diminish. And what happens is with that lower dopamine is a lot of times we feel like I need something. Maybe I'm hungry, maybe I'm not, and so we eat to satisfy or to create that pleasure. And so if we've had a history or a habit in the past of using food as a comfort or a stress or however to alleviate that, it is not serving us in menopause. And so we need to figure out that dopamine cycle, that loop. The next two I have here are leptin and ghrelin, and leptin and ghrelin are all about our appetite and our hunger. So leptin decreases in menopause, but its role is to reduce our appetite. And so, shoot, darn it, now it's decreasing, and it's not giving me the signals that I'm full. Having said that, in the American culture, we eat very fast, and so even in a healthy individual, there is a lag time between our eating and that leptin release saying we are full. In the American culture, when you eat so fast and you think you're still hungry because you don't feel full, because the leptin hasn't been released because it's slow to trigger the brain to tell you you're full, you keep eating. And that's how we overeat. And that's how you get that feeling like, oh my gosh, I ate way too much. This came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. You just needed to slow down in the eating. A lot easier said than done when you're ravenous or you feel you're super hungry or you're eating for pleasure or stress management to have that coincide. And then you add menopause where it's decreasing. So The other thing about leptin is it's really good for fat burning. So it's like a double whammy. We not only have a decreased ability to feel satiated, we now have a decreased ability to burn fat. So not a ton is known about leptin, I'll be honest with you. It is a relatively new player in the band. It showed up in the mid-50s. We didn't do a whole lot with it until the 90s. We didn't realize its connection. So we're learning more. This is in progress, as all of this is, especially around menopause. And then lastly is ghrelin, and that is secreted from the stomach. That increases during menopause. And guess what? It's the sense of hunger. So we are getting kind of a false sense maybe, or a false cue that we're hungry because for whatever reason, it increases during menopause. So we get that sense of hunger. It could be related to stress or emotional eating or what have you. Back to the dopamine loop. So that it is, it also decreases our fat burning ability. So that's another double whammy. Those two players, they're big. I'm not a fan because I think they kind of undermine what we're trying to achieve here in weight management. They're important to know. It's a fact, okay? This is what we have going on. So let's go back to that insulin resistance, since there's a whole lot of talk about insulin resistance these days and insulin sensitivity. So insulin sensitivity means your insulin's really highly acutely aware and working very well. It's ushering that glucose into your cells. Insulin resistance is the opposite. So you eat food, it triggers your pancreas to release this, in this picture anyway, a little blue dot that is going to help usher the glucose into the cells, but it's resistant. The cells are resistant. And typically they're resistant because your estrogen's a little bit lower, but it also has to do with fat stores. The more fat stores you have, they're releasing enzymes and hormones, impeding the insulin ability to be sensitive. So when we have high blood glucose, we feel tired, we feel low energy, we feel sluggish, we could have brain fog, all of this. And eventually the sugar has to go somewhere, so it stores in as fat, which only increases our fat. We feel tired, which sometimes we think I must be hungry, I've got to eat, or we have that miscue from the ghrelin telling us we're hungry, we eat, and the cycle continues. This is why we do A1C levels for like your annual physical. If you're checking cholesterol and your blood counts, they're typically doing an A1C also, because your A1C is a read of your overall glucose levels. It will say, it will be able to monitor if you have highs and lows, which you don't want to do. The ideal is to kind of maintain. You're going to have it spike a little bit when you eat and then come back down, but you don't want the super high spikes and the super lows. And so that's what will happen when you have this glucose resistance. You get those spikes because the insulin has to work even harder to get it out of the blood. A1C is an indicator of that. So I think 5.7 is the line in the sand where they'll say you're pre-diabetic. And that's the time we need to address. But it's also important to address it on the front end. It is definitely able to be curbed with diet. And here we're going to talk about improving our insulin sensitivity. What's the number one thing? Exercise. We need to move, which sometimes doesn't feel good because we're tired and we're sluggish and we're not sleeping well. But we need to make ourselves move. We need to avoid sugar, especially high concentrations of sugar, like in sodas, fruit juices, candy corn. Yes, avoid the sugars, because that's going to spike our glucose and eventually create some resistance. Increase your water, as always. Decrease your carbohydrates, especially if they're in processed foods. The complex carbohydrates in fruits and vegetables are different. That's a better carbohydrate. But the processed foods, when in doubt, go fresh. If it can't last for 5 days in your refrigerator, probably not the best choice for you. So really always try to eat whole foods, fresh foods, avoid the processed. we need to increase our protein intake, especially at breakfast. I think the RDA, recommended daily allowance, is 0.7 grams of protein per kilogram of weight. So you can do the math. You can figure out a calculator pounds to kilograms, because even though in 4th grade they told me they were going to the metric system here, we haven't gotten it. But in medicine, they do go by kilograms. So I think 140 pounds is about 62 kilograms. So the RDA wants you to have 0.7 grams per kilogram. But that's just the minimal. As we age and as menopause sets in, our muscle mass decreases, which means we need to increase our protein. So a lot of the literature is supporting at least a gram of protein per kilogram, at least. Some people will say 1.3. So if you can get it to 1 gram, so 60 grams, if you're 140 pounds, I think that's the math, around that, 1 gram per kilogram, remember that. And to start your day with a higher protein diet, because that will sustain you, that holds you. And then the last is to decrease our cortisol, which we learned last time is our stress. Cortisol holds the sugar, it decreases the insulin productivity or the sensitivity. And so we need to practice mindfulness. We need to keep our stress as manageable as possible, which of course is very hard because we're going through menopause and we're agitated. So these are things. Exercise will help with decreasing cortisol. Let's talk visceral fat. What is it? This is the belly fat. Everyone's talking about visceral fat as the bad fat. It sure is. And here's an example. This is a diagram of what visceral fat is. So we all have this sub-Q fat. It's that little layer on top of our muscle. This is the muscle of the abdominal wall, and all of these are our organs, and all this yellow is visceral fat. Visceral fat is where the sugar gets stored, so it continues to grow the more you have. If you don't change your diet, if you don't exercise, you're just going to grow that visceral fat. And this is what is responsible for heart disease, hypertension, your high cholesterol, your blood pressure. These are all the things that become worse in menopause, and a lot of it is related to that visceral fat. So our goal is to decrease the visceral fat. Well, how do I know if I have visceral fat? I've always been a little round in the middle, or I've always been, I've got this, maybe I'm, how do I know if I have visceral fat? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because there is a very simple, the more scientific, it involves lots of tests, but this is something you can do at home. And what you do is you measure your waist upon exhale. So get a tape measure, put it smooth to your skin at your waist, which is, if you're looking in the mirror, it's your smallest curve in. And if you can't see any curve in, do it about your belly button, okay? You measure that in inches, and then you take your height in inches and you divide your waist. Oh my gosh, I spelled waist wrong. Oop, I knew I'd find a typo. Waist by height. So, and then you're going to get a number. And if that number is greater than 0.5, you have visceral fat. And so this is our equation. So maybe 0.5, you're on the border. All right, I've got a little visceral fat. Okay, I'm 57. I'm postmenopausal for 7 years. I've had a hysterectomy. I have nothing helping me out in this department. I've got ghrelin and leptin and 0 estrogen. So this is manageable. All of these can be reversed, corrected. Maybe not to our bodies of age 21, but we can improve on this. How do we decrease visceral fat? Exercise, first of all. We have to move. Laughing, we have to laugh, because you know what laughing will do? It'll decrease our cortisol. It'll bring our stress down. Find joy. Mindfulness, also decreasing stress. Good nutrition, good sleep, and drinking water. So maybe we can't find anything to laugh about, and maybe our sleep isn't that great and we're finding that hard to manage. We can manage our nutrition, we can manage our activity, we can control our mindfulness, and we can drink water. And my bet is if we can improve our exercise and our nutrition and our mindfulness, our sleep will improve as well. So a lot of these are interconnected. This is how we decrease visceral fat. Let's get into the specifics. Diet and nutrition. So plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Choosing lean sources of protein, fish, salmon, freshwater fish. These are good sources of protein. Lean meat. If you're a red meat person, I've got you. Try to do grass-fed, organic beef. It's leaner, less fat, okay? Limiting your processed meats, limiting that saturated fat that's found in dairy products. Cheese is great for us, a great source of protein, but it is loaded in fat. So there's constantly this balance of what's good, what's too much. Choosing moderate amount of monounsaturated, choosing portion sizes wisely. At the end of the day, it is calories in and calories out. What are we taking in and what are we burning? Having said that, most of your diets out there are putting you in a starvation. If you are on any diet that is under 1,000 calories a day, that is considered starvation. And what you're doing, oh shoot, hold on, I've got to go grab my battery. I cannot believe this. So what you're doing when you are starving yourself is you are killing the protein in your body. You're losing weight from protein, not the fat that you're trying to lose. You're going to lose the protein. And when we lose protein, that's the higher metabolizing cells. That is, and we don't want to lose the protein because that's what's giving us strength. So, sorry about this, guys. So you want to be eating at least 1,800 calories a day, maybe 2,000. And it's important that we just are eating the right things, not 1,800 calories worth of processed foods, but making sure we're getting those grams of protein in and the nutrients that will sustain us and help us build back that muscle that we're losing in menopause, that will satisfy our appetite, and that will help us reduce our visceral fat. So a couple of the things that we really need to focus on is omega-3s. These are especially beneficial for preserving heart, breast, and bone health. So these are things that we need to do because, as we know, as we age, menopause or no menopause, men and women alike, we become more susceptible to bone health and heart disease. Our diets are such that it is, a lot of the American diet is such that it is not conducive to good heart health. So omega-3s, you've got blueberries, nuts, grains, Brussels sprouts, salmon, artichoke. These are, I think that's pomegranate. These are all foods high in omega-3. It's a great nutrient and we need to find a way. You can also take omega-3 in supplements. All I'm going to say about supplements, I think they've got great value, but I highly recommend you talk to your provider before starting them to make sure you're going to get the right dosing of what you need, depending on what medications you're on as well. Vitamin D is one of those key nutrients. Living in the Northeast, vitamin D, most adults are vitamin D deficient. And actually they're finding, even in Florida, people are vitamin D deficient, and they're attributing that to sunblock. We wear sunblock now. I think the recommended is something like 10 minutes a day between 10 o'clock and 2 p.m., 5 times a week or something crazy. Like we'll go weeks without seeing the sun in upstate New York. So vitamin D It's tough to get, but you can get it nutritionally. You can get it in the foods we eat. It is super, and you can also get it in supplements. It will help stabilize your emotions. And it is really important for menopausal women. So calcium, we hear a lot about calcium. We hear it for bone health. You want the vitamin D with the calcium to help with the absorption of the calcium. But what you also need is vitamin K2, because what we've learned is that K2 with calcium will target the calcium to where we want it to go in the bones. Otherwise, the calcium can end up as plaque in our arteries, which we do not want. It can end up in our fat tissue, which we do not want. But if you take it with K2, vitamin K2, that acts as like a parking lot attendant. It leads that calcium to where we want it to go, and it helps it attach to the bones. So if you're taking calcium, again, talk to your provider about the dosing. If you are someone that's got a history of kidney stones, you want to make sure you're taking the right amount, because there is a correlation. And then lastly, magnesium. Magnesium also helps with calcium absorption. It helps with moods and anxiety. It helps with migraines and headaches, hormone related. It does help with sleep. And magnesium is naturally not being produced naturally in our body when we are hitting menopause. So here are some, ladies, dark chocolate. Finally, we can have something. So dark chocolate is a good source of magnesium. Your dark green leafy spinach, avocados, black beans. So all great sources of magnesium. So what else can we do to lose weight? This is not rocket science. This is no different. If you have not ever incorporated exercise or movement into your daily life, today's the day, tomorrow's the day. And I'm not asking you to get on a spin bike and have someone yelling at you, or to decide to run a marathon. We need to start somewhere. Maybe it's parking on the other side of campus and walking to your office, allowing yourself that extra time. Maybe it's during lunch hour, grabbing a buddy and doing a brisk walk through the glen. Whatever, maybe it's just dancing. Whatever your movement of choice is, let's work on that. Figure out a way, because again, calories in versus calories out. We want to eat the most nutritious amount, but we need to be burning. And the movement and the exercise, it is a mood elevator because it releases that endorphin. It is, which will then help that dopamine loop. It is good for your cardiovascular health. We all know this. So the goal is 150 minutes of aerobics a week. That's 5 days a week, 30-minute walk, which may seem like a ton if you do nothing. You build up to it. Like I said, park the furthest from your office and walk your car in. Take the stairs and not the elevator. These are baby steps, but baby steps turn into bigger steps that allow us to build bone and muscle health. Then the last thing is, you're seeing a lot of this is a super important strength training. We need to build the muscle back, which is why we need to elevate our protein. When we build the muscle back, it's twofold. It will improve our bone and muscle health, and our so that we can kind of mitigate the osteoporosis that happens. But also, the more muscle we have, that's a higher burning cell, and it metabolizes our food faster. So if we can build more muscle, we're going to metabolize our food and our calories quicker. So any sort of resistance or strength training. And maybe that's too much enough. Start with body weight. Start with doing some squats. Do them in the shower. Do them while you're waiting for your toast to pop out of the toaster. Like, introduce things that are weight bearing and then gain. Then start with maybe resistance bands or adding weight. These are all doable things. And I encourage you to, typically it works best when we do it with someone, that accountability, that camaraderie, that connection. There are times when I am on a walk and the next thing you know, the walk is over, but I still have more to say because I have connected well and we've dual. Or if it's your alone time, you're on a treadmill, you're watching your favorite show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians or whatever is your guilty pleasure, find a way to incorporate movement in a way that becomes enjoyable because it's really so very important. And here's our dopamine loop, because this is what we're trying to create. We want that stimulus, that walk, that mindfulness meditation, that bike ride, that run. It releases the dopamine. It reinforces, oh, that was good. That felt good. This is good for me. And that's how we form a habit. This can happen with anything. In the beginning, maybe not so much. Maybe you're out for a walk and it's a chore, but it's your mindset. You get to take a walk. So 21 days makes a habit. My bet is if you walked on a regular basis, within a week, you're going to start feeling better. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about hot flashes, since a lot of people commented on that. And what I would suggest you do is start a log of the frequency and duration and intensity. We're not really 100% sure what causes hot flashes. There's a mistrigger to the hypothalamus in the brain. The brain thinks we're warm, so it opens up all of our blood vessels. We feel all this heat. We get flush. We break into a sweat to cool ourselves. It does. 87% of the women feel hot flashes. Most of it is resolved within the first 5 years of postmenopause. There are people that are called super flashers, and which is a term I learned. Thank you very much. I think it was Lydia or somebody here mentioned that to me. Or sent me an article. So if your hot flashes, I would encourage you to do a dietary log. Like I said, candy corn is not my friend in the hot flash department, which is just wrong. So dietary log and see if there's a correlation, if there's certain foods. Alcohol should be decreased. And I didn't mention that earlier on the weight loss. I think it was on my bullet points. It's a waste of calories. It may be enjoyable. It may be your relaxation. But my bet is if you can cut out, if alcohol has become a regular every evening thing, a glass or 2 glasses, if you can cut that back, even just cut it back by a third or cut it back by a half, you will feel better. It will assist you in weight loss. Just a little fun fact that the liver metabolizes our food. As we know, the liver sees alcohol as not good. And it will, if you have wine after dinner, it will metabolize that wine first before any food because it sees it as a toxin. And then it will not metabolize your food as well. So just a little FYI on the alcohol. I'm not saying we shouldn't drink. I'm just giving you that knowledge. And then if hot flashes are disrupting your daily life, I beg you to speak with your provider. If you're inside that 10-year window, maybe hormone replacement therapy would be effective. If you're outside that 10-year postmenopausal, there are other medications. We talked about them last week or 2 weeks ago. So there's other things you can do. And then lastly, I forgot this 2 weeks ago and I emailed it, I think, into the email that the people that came, but the Ember Wave, there's some pretty good data supporting its effectiveness. I know 2 people personally that swear by it that have struggled with hot flashes, and they can't speak highly enough. So it's a watch. It looks like a watch. You wear it on your wrist, and the general gist is the minute you feel a hot flash coming on, you tap it, it gives you this cold sensation on the point of contact that then kind of resets that heating process and cools. I did it to kind of practice on a friend of mine's, and it was really kind of, it was impressive. So it's worth looking into. Here are the references for this week's talk. I encourage you to go to mymenoplan.org. This is a site that is funded by the National Institute of Health. And it's really interesting. I was playing around a lot with it. You can put in your symptoms, and you can put in, do you want to do this? Do you want to treat it medically? Do you want to treat it alternative medicine? You can put in all these kind of variables, and it will spit out some suggestions for you. I encourage you to go in to that website, and I like that it's sponsored by National Institute of Health. There's nobody that's benefiting from this. It's not like at the end you're like, buy this magic pill and you're going to feel better. So that's that. And then I had to go back to my friend Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, you can do better. So these are baby steps. These are things we can do. I want you to feel empowered by this. So I'm going to stop the recording and open it up. Hold on, stop recording. And hold on, I want to stop my screen share so I can see. I'm sure you want to stop this recording. Yes.